Legacy of Dragonholt is a game for 1 to 6 players. Gather your band of heroes and journey to realms of Dragonholt in Legacy of Dragonholt. The first game to use the Oracle system, Legacy of Dragonholt captures the spirit of a role-playing game without needing a game master. This narrative game for 1 to 6 players allows players to build their own unique hero and embark on 6 noble quests. Battle goblins, foil the plot of an evil lord, and add a new story to your tale. Legacy of Dragonholt is a narrative adventure game that creates a unique experience by blending aspects of role-playing and adventure games, open-world concept video games, and even choose-your-own-adventure books. Unlike many games, Legacy of Dragonholt is not about winning or losing, but rather about the act of creating a story. Without the need for a game master, this game ensures that every player has the opportunity to shape how their adventure plays out, while its intuitive gameplay means that you waste little time before jumping into your tale. Before you first set out on your adventure, you must confront one of the most difficult questions in gaming: who will you become? Legacy of Dragonholt gives you the opportunity to play as one of 6 humanoid races that reside in Dragonholt: humans, elves, dwarves, orcs, gnomes, and catfolk. Next, you will select a class. Before defining your physical and personality traits, inscribing a personal history. Each of these features creates a multifaceted character and defines the types of traits you possess, which in turn affect how you will approach obstacles throughout your journey and how you will contribute to your party. For an in-depth look at the character creation process, you may look at our previous article here. Once you've created your own unique character, you're ready to dive into a narrative adventure unlike any you've seen before. Now that is the opening blurb for Legacy of Dragonholt. Legacy of Dragonholt is a game that is it was designed by Nikki Valence. The publisher is Fantasy Flight Games. The game came out in 2017. It has a playing time of 60 minutes and up. It involves themes of adventure, exploration, and fantasy. It is labeled as a cooperative role-playing storytelling game. Now, Legacy of Dragonholt is basically a choose-your-own-adventure game. People that have reviewed the game have basically said it is not all choose-your-own-adventure, it's not all board game, and it's not all role-playing. But essentially, it is a enhanced version of Choose Your Own Adventure. The game comes with a map, some scenario books, and some counters during the game, which basically is designed to be a one-player game. From the reviews I've looked at, you can play it with other players, but the only difference between playing it yourself and playing it with other players is you create more characters, and then the players take turns deciding which one of their characters will resolve a paragraph entry. So if you have a dwarf and an elf, and one of the characters is the elf, and you read an entry and they say, well, I will resolve it, then they would flip over their action token and they would turn to the page that corresponds to their character skills. Now, in the game, your character is defined by their race, their background, their personality, but they're also defined by the stats that they are given. And from what some of the reviews have said, you can have as many stats as you want, which doesn't quite make a lot of sense to me, but they said the more stats you have, the less stamina you will have, and as you run out of stamina, you will be defeated or you will die. So obviously there is some mechanism that allows you to kind of create a very multifaceted character, but it's a character that probably wouldn't survive long in the game. But in addition to the books that you get, which is basically an introductory book, you basically get a book called Dragonholt Village, and then you basically get the actual storybook, which you will follow. You get 5 supplements, 6 if you include the walkthrough supplement called Two New Roads, as in T-O, New Roads. The 5 supplements are the Crypt of Carthun, the Sliver of Silver, Terror on the Prairie, Whispering Leaves, Paper Faces, and I think I said already to New Roads. So now, according to the reviews in the game, all of these supplements combine to make one story. So eventually, as you complete the game, you will go through all the books, or it is possible to complete the game, as in finish the overarching story, without going through all the books. So, and I guess that is supposed to lend to the replayability of the story. Although some reviewers have indicated it's not necessarily any replayability as opposed to just alternate endings. Now, the way the story will begin is once you have created your character, you will be told what paragraph to begin in the adventure you are reading. As you read the paragraph, you will be given a series of options, apparently more than 2, which is, it's just like a choose your own adventure. I heard one reviewer say, well, it's not choose your own adventure because you have more than 2. Well, there were a lot of choose your own adventures where you had more than 2 options. It just depended on the adventure. But you will be given these options, and based on your skills that you have, or your race, or your background, certain options will be available to you. And then you will choose that and go to the next paragraph. And pretty much that's how the story continues. There's no dice in the game. So there is combat, but apparently there is no dice. Now, when you have completed a story book, one of the 5 or 6 books in the game, you will have an opportunity to go to Dragonholt Village. And essentially, Dragonholt Village is a book with different shops and inns that you can visit, where presumably you will discover items. You might meet somebody who maybe will come with you on an adventure, so you have them technically on your sheet when you do an adventure. So is this person with you? You would say yes, so then you can go to page 343. Now, the game uses something called the Oracle system, which, other than Legacy of Dragonholt, we've never heard of again, meaning Fantasy Flight Games, as far as I know, has not published any other games boasting this Oracle system. I do know they said Nikki Valens created Mansions of Madness, but I don't think Mansions of Madness uses the Oracle system. I think it has its own system. Now, as I said, there's no dice in the game. In between encounters or stories, you will visit Dragonholt Village. Now, there is the key mechanism in the game to keep the story moving is something known as, I think these are called time tracks, or basically segments of time. So as you do certain things, you will give up certain time. In each scenario, there's only a certain number of days to complete it. And in fact, the entire arc or quest, there's only a certain amount of time to complete it, meaning there's only a certain number of days to get through all 6 books if that's what you're required to do. But the results, so for example, if you're in Dragonholt Village and you choose to talk to a blacksmith, when you're done, that may take up a quarter of a day, a couple of hours, or it may take up an afternoon, depending on if the guy talks a lot. So that is the element which keeps the game moving and tells you when you have to start the next book or the next chapter. Now, as I said, the game comes with item cards, and these are cards that will enhance your abilities during the game or give you other skills, which you would just keep in front of you or reference as you need to. It comes with a map of Dragonholt, but the map is not actually used in the game, meaning other than a representation of places you can visit, there's no use in the map. You don't move on the map. You don't refer to the map at any time while you're reading these stories. It's just a nicely illustrated map. It comes with like an initial letter, which kind of starts the game, in a nice little, faux envelope. And then it comes with, of course, the storybook. Now, the individuals that have played Legacy of Dragonholt say it is excellently written, meaning that the story narrative is very, very well done. So basically, just the value of it as a story itself is quite high. Now, having said that, if we are going to compare Legacy of Dragonholt to Journey to the Overland, I think the big elephant in the room is that Journey to the Overland is not a choose-your-own-adventure game. Okay, it is a paragraph-driven game, but it is not a choose-your-own-adventure. And I think the difference is, for those of you who might be familiar with it, there was a game published by Dwarf Star Press, I believe, but it was called Barbarian Prince. Barbarian Prince is a paragraph-driven game. It is not a choose-your-own-adventure game. And again, that might not tell you the difference, but it's giving you a better comparison. But in a paragraph-driven game, at certain points in plots, you will refer to paragraphs to decide what is going on, to get an explanation of what is going on, or to interact with the game. So in a paragraph-driven game, you interact with the game through the paragraphs in the game, right? In a choose-your-own-adventure game, you do interact with the game through the paragraphs in the game, but you only interact with the game through the paragraphs in the game. So in a choose-your-own-adventure game, you are going to always be going from one paragraph to another paragraph to another paragraph. Unlike in a paragraph-driven game, you may be doing other things, such as moving on a map, such as having a combat, such as, maybe interacting with other characters, in between actually referring to paragraphs that will drive the game later as you get to points or locations. And I guess that's the best way I can put it. But it is a distinction with the difference. They are not one and the same. So that is probably the biggest difference between Legacy of Dragonholt and Journey to the Overland. Another obvious difference is Journey to the Overland uses dice, like role-playing games use dice. In Legacy of Dragonholt, your character creation is basically you select stats and you give them to your character. And then I guess after you've done that, you determine what your stamina is. But you're not rolling for the stats. And the stats are not stats as in numbers, they're stats as in skills. So you can say, I want thief skill, I want sprinter skill, but that's it. In Journey to the Overland, your skills are in degrees. You could be a thief, but you might not be a very good thief because you only rolled 40% when you acquired thief skill. And in Journey to the Overland, you can't just pick your skills. You have to purchase them with experience points that have to be earned through playing the game. Right? So as your character gets experience, then of course they can get more skills. And some skills require that you have other skills in order to get them. Now, I'm not sure if Legacy of Dragonholt has that element or not. But what I'm simply saying is there's no dice mechanic tied to the skills or your race or your character creation. Now, some things in common in both games, I would say both games are kind of designed to be role-playing. Like Legacy of Dragonholt, I would characterize it as role-playing. You're just role-playing in a book or a story, as opposed to over the tabletop or over the map. One reviewer in fact said he sat on his couch and played the game without ever getting off his couch. Well, you probably couldn't do that in Journey to the Overland, right? Unless you got long arms or something, because you need to move figures, you need to pull cards, you need to roll dice. So it would be hard to do that just sitting on your couch. But in both instances, you are playing a role. You are assuming a role of a character. So that is something they have in common. But they're also both hybrids. So Legacy of Dragonholt is more a hybrid of a role-playing game and a choose-your-own-adventure game. Right? One of the selling points of the game is you don't need a dungeon master to play Legacy of Dragonholt. You don't need a dungeon master to play Journey to the Overland. Both games have character sheets. I mean, they may be used a little bit differently, but both of them have character sheets. Now, though, that's kind of where the similarities are going to end, though. Because for one thing, Legacy of Dragonholt is a closed-in game. And when I say closed-in game, what I mean by that is you have to play the adventures in the book. Right? There's really nothing else to do but play the adventures in the book. And the adventures have an arc that you have to follow. You may pick it up at different points depending on the skills you get, but you will pick up that arc and conclude it. And there's no replayability once you've completed those, right? And to date, they have not, at the time of this video, they have not published any follow-up to Legacy of Dragonholt. Journey to the Overland is open-ended. It's not closed-ended, and it's an open world game. So it's not just open-ended, it's an open world. And what I mean by that is you can literally play Journey to the Overland without ever reading any of the paragraphs, even though it's a paragraph-driven game, because it includes encounter cards, right? It includes daily actions. It includes map locations. So I have played many games of Journey to the Overland where I have literally moved around the map, had encounters, went to a new location, moved to the next one, had encounters, and all during these encounters, things are changing for my character. He may be getting weapons from these encounters, he may be taking wounds, he may be getting people joining his party, but I have not read any paragraphs other than the text on the cards, because the cards in Journey to the Overland is what kind of gives it the board game aspect. Right, so Journey to the Overland is kind of a hybrid between a role-playing game and a board game, right? If you want to say choose your own adventure, you could, but it's not, because there are very few options in Journey to the Overland where you will read a paragraph and it says, do you do A or do you do B? That's just not how the paragraphs are set up in the game. What you are more likely to find in Journey to the Overland when you read a paragraph is you must go to Dead Man's Ditch and recover this, and once you have recovered it, you can now return here, and then you read the next paragraph, or then you can go into the next room, or here's a reward, right? So, but the crux of it is you now have to take your character across the map and resolve any encounters on the way. You have to resolve whatever challenge is in Dead Man's Ditch, which is usually explained in the paragraph, or sometimes in the location, because some locations are just challenges in and of themselves, like the Dragon's Cave and if you go after Dragon Valron. So that is the big difference between a game like Journey to the Overland and Legacy of Dragonholt. Is in Journey to the Overland, you do not ever really necessarily need to refer to any of the paragraphs. The paragraphs are a part of the game, but they are not the whole game, which is what you would get in Legacy of Dragonholt. Now, I will say this about Legacy of Dragonholt. The production quality is very high. If you look at the components, if you look at the books, if you look at the letters, Fantasy Flight is obviously a very large game publisher. They have a huge pedigree of games, and they were able to bring all of that to bear in this product. I would also say that the Dragonholt world is probably... I'd say it's probably well developed over all of their products. Now, I'm not sure if there's any one product that really delves into Dragonholt, as a role-playing game would do, such as cities and locations and things. But with all the products out there, Terrinoth is a well-developed world. Having said that, though, the Overland is a very, very, very well-developed world. Okay, it is very well developed, even beyond what is actually in the game of Journey to the Overland itself. And a lot of ways that comes out sometimes in the encounter cards. You will encounter people or things will be mentioned sometimes in those cards, which you probably are not going to know just from Journey to the Overland, the game. I mean, and as a side note, there are literally two books, two fiction books with about 70,000 words each book of stories with Journey to the Overland. So Journey to the Overland is a very, very well developed world as well. I guess in conclusion, if I was looking at this and you'd say, well, if I have Legacy of Dragonholt, do I need or should I buy Journey to the Overland? And I would say yes, because if you bought Legacy of Dragonholt and it's the type of game you like, then you will definitely like Journey to the Overland. And I would also say yes, because if you bought Legacy of Dragonholt and you wanted more, you wanted the story to continue, you wanted to be in that world all the time, then you would probably like Journey to the Overland. Now, having said that, if you say, well, I bought Legacy of Dragonholt and I didn't really like it, it wasn't my style of game, so does that mean I will not like Journey to the Overland? Then I would say no, because Journey to the Overland is so different from Legacy of Dragonholt in so many different ways that you would never have to have the same experience. For example, in Journey to the Overland, there's very little reading of just paragraph after paragraph after paragraph. I mean, any game there's reading, but reading paragraphs is not a part of Journey to the Overland. Playing the game is what Journey to the Overland involves. It involves playing the game. Each turn, which is a day in the game, each turns are basically one day. You have to decide, what am I going to do today? What am I going to do in this world? Am I going to sit here and rest? Am I going to go out and encounter? Am I going to try to build up a skill? Am I going to put my character in the school? Do I have a combat I have to finish? Am I able to start a war somewhere on the map? So it is totally distinguishable enough from Legacy of Dragonholt, is that if you didn't like Legacy of Dragonholt, that's cool. I mean, because Choose Your Own Adventures is a kind of a specific, unique type of it's a unique type of experience that some people like and some people don't. I will say this, when I was younger, I really liked Choose Your Own Adventure, like Lone Wolf and what was the other one? Steve Jackson's games. But Fighting Fantasy is what I'm thinking about. But as I've gotten older, it's kind of hard for me to get through a Choose Your Own Adventure book, and I've repurchased a lot of the old Lone Wolf books. But when I try to get through them, it's kind of, I'm kind of impatient with just sitting there and flipping pages, and in the front, then I'm in the back, then I'm in the front, then okay, I can roll a die now. And then I'm in the back, and then after a while, it's like I just start finding myself browsing through the pages just to see the interesting monsters or the good art, because my attention span for the story now is I want to be more immersed than simply reading a paragraph and stopping and going to the next one. So what I'm saying is, if you are that type of person that you require more immersion in that, then you certainly want to check out Journey to the Overland. Alright guys, it took me a while to get the second one up, but hopefully we will see the others in this series soon, because we have some other good games to look at and compare to Journey to the Overland. Take care and God bless.